So today is the last day of the teaching this time. So today here, mainly the Taiwanese audience from Taiwan, from the different Dharma centers, and then others who have also gathered here from different places, because we have many different places, people from different places. I thought of doing the Bodhisattva vows ceremony as the auspicious ending. And so I do take the Bodhisattva vows every day. And so there are the 18 Bodhisattva root downfalls and the 46 Bodhisattva branch vows to be kept. So in the 6th session Guru Yoga, there are the 18 root downfalls mentioned. So if the 4 binding factors are complete, then you actually go against the 18 root downfalls. If they are not complete, these 4 binding factors, then you are not committing the breaking of all the Bodhisattva vows as such, or losing the Bodhisattva vows. So it is mentioned scorning or deriding my praising myself and belittling others and so forth, down to it says not regarding them as detrimental, not forsaking the wish for to repeat such acts and so forth. And so the Buddha became enlightened through the practice of bodhichitta and the rest of the practices aligned with it. And if we could also take bodhisattva vows and practice them well, it would be also good for the world. And so I do take bodhisattva and tantric vows, and so today I thought of doing the bodhisattva vows. So we are at verse 81. Gyoble ting tang ten tang. Diri. Gyoble tingi ta ten tang. So 281 on page, if you have the same text as me. So first I'll finish the remaining verses of the text, Brahmanavartika. Okay. So in the English, we are on page 69, verse 278. I think that's where we are. The knowledge of suchness, stability, and omniscience is established through the reasoning of projector. Sugata here is in the context of realization. Therefore, Sugata exalts outsiders, trainees, and normal learners respectively. So the one who strove for all-knowing and succeeded for the benefit of all others is teacher. From teacher infers great love, for he does not forsake engaging in the deeds of giving guidance to all others. With great love you taught only wholesome teachings, and with wisdom you taught the ultimate truth, since you have perfected your pursuit of expounding the noble truth. Four Noble Truths. With great compassion as the motivating cause, you are the supreme reliable guide. The reason for praising the Buddha with his qualities in Pramana Samuchaya is to establish that the full account of valid cognition is what is found in his teachings. The Buddha did not reject inference. Further, on many occasions, and so forth. So, with this, we complete the teaching on the second chapter. So these lines from Bodhisattva Charya Avatara are very sharp, it gives very sharp reasoning. So it says, all suffering or misery in the world come from wishing oneself to be happy. All happiness and joy in the world come from wishing others to be happy. And so everything good, auspicious in the world, happening in the world, happen due to this compassion, love, and affection to others. So what is need is there to say more. Look at the difference between the Buddhas who have cared for the welfare of others and the childish beings. Who think of only oneself. And so the Buddha is someone who trained himself through the path, and thereby making progress in becoming better and better spiritually. Whereas we, these ordinary sentient beings, are obsessed with selfish attitude, self-cherishing attitude. This is actually held in the core of our heart. And so the text, Shantideva's text says, if you do not exchange or switch your joy and happiness with the suffering of others, leave alone reaching Buddhahood. Even in the samsara, the cyclic existence, you will not have happiness. So even from a mundane point of view, a worldly perspective, the practice of warm heart, good heart, is considered very good. And therefore, we, as practitioners of bodhichitta, should think of bringing benefit to all sentient beings and not harming anyone. So these lines from Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So if you say that if you do not have this thought and wish to bring benefit to all others, but remain selfish in the world, there is no way you can have true happiness for yourself. So, to the best of your ability, if you are able to help others sincerely, bringing happiness and benefit to others, you will really benefit yourself. And therefore, these lines, His Holiness is repeating these lines from Bodhisattva Charyavatara, from saying, all happiness in the world comes from wishing others to be happy, all suffering from wishing oneself to be happy, and then what need, unless you switch yourself, your joy and happiness with the suffering of others, and so forth. So, at this time, as we have the opportunity as human beings, if you are able to develop this bodhicitta, thinking of others to be more important than oneself, cherishing others over oneself, and by reflecting on the disadvantages or the shortcomings of self-cherishing attitude and the advantages of the cherishing others over oneself. So, of course, when you think of working for others or helping others and benefiting others, you should also understand that others are those beings who are overpowered and by or swayed by their own mental afflictions. They are also obsessed with self-cherishing attitude. And so in the world, if you are someone who only think of yourself alone, being selfish, then you will not have real happiness. And so as you progress along the path, the main thing that purifies or overcomes the mental afflictions is that of the wisdom, the view of emptiness. And therefore, view of emptiness together combined with bodhicitta is the combination of these two is the main factor that leads us along the path and culminating in Buddhahood. And therefore, these are our primary practices. So this is blessing for the tea. So just as it is said in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, if you have a very strong sense of cherishing others over oneself, this will help to purify negativities and also accumulate positive energies and merit. So, bodhicitta So if you are able to hold others, cherish others over yourself, it actually brings inner strength and courage within yourself. So the text which emphasizes the teaching on the practice of exchanging self and others, equaling and exchanging self and others is Bodhisattva Charya Avatara. So I always have this text beside my bed, and it really helps to reflect on this bodhichitta, the altruistic spirit of enlightenment or awakening. So of course, we all want a happy state of mind and also a healthy body. So what disturbs these is the cherishing oneself over others. And therefore, cherishing others over oneself through bodhichitta really brings peace within yourself. So considering self-cherishing attitude as being a fault, if you develop the bodhichitta, cherishing others over oneself and develop bodhichitta, you will have inner strength, courage. And so, to the best of our ability, if we could practice bodhichitta through this equaling, exchanging self and others, the most important text is the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara itself. So it really points out the faulty natures of mind, such as attachment and so forth, through reason. And therefore, this text is really amazing. And you should, if you could keep this text, Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, beside you all the time, it would be really helpful. The true peace and in your mind will be brought about, not really through deity yoga practice, but bodhicitta, which cherishes others over oneself. And so, my dear Dharma friends, please keep this in mind and don't leave this Bodhisattva Charya Avatara far away from you. And if you have the Bodhisattva Charya Avatara on in your bookshelf in the altar, you should the text should be jutting out from the other piles of scriptures, so that you are able to take it in your hands easily and study it. So I was thinking of doing question and answer session with the Chinese Dharma friends from Taiwan. So we did meditation on the all-encompassing yoga mind yesterday, and did meditation on bodhicitta and the review of emptiness. So today we'll focus on Q&A session. So let's start with the questions. So earlier His Holiness was also reciting the verses of from Bodhisattva Charya Avatara, which recounts the benefits of bodhicitta. at the end of the first chapter.
请问，第一个问题是由福智比丘僧团信修法师所提出。问题是，请问法王，如何学习用正理去入佛法，获得定解？
How should we gain conviction in Buddhism by learning it through logical approach? This is the question. So with regards to the reasoning and logical approach, on the one hand, it is a subject that you should learn on the side of other main practices, such as the training your mind in the determination to be free from samsara or renunciation, bodhichitta, and so forth. So if you are able to use reason and logic, it has its own special benefit. So the logical approach is something which can be used to get rid of your doubts and get clarification about the points of practices that are in the Lamrim, which are main practices.
那佛法发展到每个地方都会经过在地化的过程。
So while spreading Buddhism, I think this is the question. While spreading Buddhism in a land, we should do so in accordance with the culture of that particular community. Consequently, what is the most important thing to do for this association of Tibetan Buddhist traditions in Taiwan?
그래서
So, spreading Buddhism in accordance with the culture of that particular community, I don't know if that is necessary or not. So, when Buddhism was spreading in India, the rest of the religious and philosophical schools were asserting or believing in an Atman, a soul theory. So they were holding these views very strongly. So for Buddhist practitioners, of course, we should practice humility and be at peace. And the Buddha became a monk and then became enlightened. So similarly, we should tread along the path and become a Buddha in the end. The Buddhahood cannot come just by chance. So in Tibet, when Master Atisha came to Tibet, he taught the lamp for the path to enlightenment. And so based on that, we have the Lamrim text, the stages of the path genre of text. And within this genre, we have Jerimbuche Tsongkhapa's the great treatise of the stages of the path to enlightenment, and then the middle-length stages of the path, and also the short path, Lamrim, concise Lamrim, and later Penchen Lobsang Yishi and so forth wrote the other. Penchen Rinpoche wrote the path of bliss, and so forth. And then there are other lamrims which are meant for total beginners, which teach the paths, the practices in easy way, guiding the students. So of course, you may base yourself on the path of bliss and the swift path and so forth of Lamrim, but when you actually explain these texts, you should be able to incorporate the teachings given in the great treatise of the stages of the path to enlightenment, and also the different logical approaches, the reasonings and so forth from the logic and epistemological texts as well. So of course, when you guide students, you should do so in accordance with their mental capacity. So what is the most important thing to do for the Association of Tibetan Buddhist Traditions in Taiwan in spreading Buddhism there? So if you, because of being having greater affinity with the Gelug tradition, you should use the texts that are studied in the Gelug text. You should study those of the classic texts like Madhyamaka Avatara and Bodhisattva Avatara. So Madhyamaka Avatara is a very important text to study the Madhyamaka view of emptiness, and the Bodhisattva Avatara for the extensive path aspect. And then on top of that, if you are able to study texts from the other Tibetan Buddhist traditions like Sakya and Kagyu, of course, they may be different in their interpretation, the way they explain things, but basically they come down to the same point. And so, when I was doing retreat in Potala in those old days, different Thangka paintings are hung in my room, and then some of the Thangka paintings are of Jesu Milarepa. And then I was reading Jesu Milarepa's the autobiographies, and while doing the retreat and reading this text in the retreat room, it was really inspiring for me. So in Taiwan, the Buddha Dharma centers should focus on studying Madhyamaka Avatara and entering the middle way and other classic texts. It would be to the best of your ability. If you can do that, it would be best, rather than just focusing on small texts. So it is very important to study the great treatises, the classic texts, and also within the Lamrim, from amongst the Lamrim texts, Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the stages of the path, would be good to study. So Pramana Vartika, the third question. Pramana Vartika implies the logic of a substantial continuity of consciousness to prove past and future births. But it is not easily accepted by other philosophical schools. How can we analyze our own mind stream by using the same logic given in Pramana Vartika?
줍다 시행기 켈렌 까웨스 남절레 숨바따르 ngaransu gyugi shebi gyun la takje jetap de jida yins.
So basically, how should we go about analyzing our own mind stream by using the logic given in Pramana Vartika Karika?
남들레 semki che yugyu tone kyawo nga je trube ribundi 줍다 시행기 켈 제도 상황 켈렌 그래.
So this logic of substantial continuity of consciousness to prove past and future life is accepted by all philosophical schools. Of course, apart from those theistic religious traditions which believe in a creator God. So when you talk about past and future births, of course, it has to be explained on the basis of the mind. From between the mind and the body, you have to use the mind as the basis for explaining past and future lives. So, of course, this mind has this nature of clarity and awareness, and it has to have its own similar type continuity. So, of course, this modern scientists explain things or mind on the basis of the brain. But if you have to go to the very subtle nature of the mind, unless you assert or accept a luminous, aware nature of mind, it's very difficult to explain merely on the basis of substances, physical substances like the brain, matters, and so forth. You cannot prove past and future lives. So our sensory perceptions like eye, consciousness, and so forth are based on the gross faculties, the sense powers. Whereas when you go through the process of dying, you go through the dissolution process of these gross states of mind and the elements of water, earth, water, fire, and wind, and so they dissolve the one to the next. And when all of these elements and the gross states of mind have dissolved, you are left with the subtle mind. As these gross states of mind dissolve and the subtle state of mind, subtle nature of the mind becomes more and more manifest, I mean, you are finally left with the very subtle, innate clear light. And as such, today we see people who have been declared clinically dead, but their body still remains fresh, even after the clinical death. So what this indicates is the continuity of the subtle innate mind continues to be there in the body. So with regard to these, the degrees of subtleties within the mind or consciousness, what is explained in the highest Yoga Tantra is very good. So you go through the dissolution process of the dissolution of the elements, and then these subtle, the gross consciousnesses, and then you reach what are known as the whitish appearance, reddish increase, and blackish near attainment, and finally this clear light of death. So this clear light, the spontaneous clear light mind or luminous nature of the mind is what goes, which comes from the past to the present, goes into the future, up to when you become a Buddha, all the way up to there. And so the grosser states of mind, in a way, are also based on the gross elements like water, fire, and so forth. So these explanations are quite marvelous. You don't have to talk about creator, God, and something, a creator who is a permanent, unchanging, and so forth. So how to analyze one's mind stream using this logic of Pramanavartika. So even in our case, when we go through sleep, when we are falling asleep, these gross states of mind subside. They stop working. Whereas then, as you're after going into that deep sleep, when you have dreamed, the mind becomes little more grosser. So the mind becomes more clear as you come out of sleep gradually. Sometimes you have dreams that could be indicative of what would happen to you in the future or what had happened in the past. So there are such cases. And these degrees of subtlety within the mind are explained in the highest yoga tantra. Bodhichitta is a vast subject, and I find it difficult to practice whatever I have learned about it. So all that I have learned about it. So what practical instruction would Your Holiness give for me to practice bodhicitta on a daily basis? What are the methods or techniques for bodhicitta to dawn as a pith instruction for me? So, if you think closely, in this world, everyone is talking about peace. And the source of peace is cherishing others over oneself. So the greater that attitude is, the atmosphere around you would be calm and peaceful. And also, when you have arguments with others, and you will be able to bring to the argument to conclusion through peaceful means, rather than using arms and forces. So if you have bodhicitta, the anger would naturally be less intense. So our peace of mind is mainly disturbed by anger. And as you reduce the strength of anger within yourself, you will also see that there would be a peace. So on a daily basis, in a day-to-day life, if you remain peaceful within yourself, your family, there will be peace in the family and the surrounding area. Whereas with anger, what you do is kill others. And so, as a result, we have all the production of weapons. And we take interest in using these weapons. So for the practice of bodhicitta, the most important text, as is well known, is Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So read and study this text and integrate the teachings of bodhicitta on bodhicitta taught in it within yourself, and you'll see peace of mind. How can I free myself from negative thoughts? By identifying it as soon as it arises in me, turn it into positive ones, and build up wholesome thoughts. So in any way,
mental
mental afflictions such as anger or hatred and pride, arrogance, jealousy, of course, we are not aware of them, but if you pay attention, you'll see these disturb our mind. When your anger becomes very strong, when you harm others through deceptive means, by deceiving others and so forth, even without talking about religion, if you are honest and truthful, people will also praise you for that. Whereas if you tell lies and also try to cause rift between people, of course people will not like that. They'll consider you as immoral. So, of course, we want happiness, well-being, and so forth. But the best means to achieve that goal is thinking of others' welfare, well-being over oneself. Otherwise, if you keep these mental afflictions, these negative attitudes and states of mind, such as jealousy, anger, hatred, arrogance, and so forth, you will not have happiness for yourself as well. So self-cherishing attitude is the source of all misfortunes. Whereas if you cherish, as it is said in Lama Chepa, if you are able to cherish others over yourself alone, then you will have more friends, even in this life, without having to talk about future lives and so forth. I mean, you will have a better livelihood, better living conditions. So, the self-cherishing is the source of all misfortunes, whereas cherishing others over oneself is the source of all good. So the more you have this cherishing others over oneself, you will have greater peace of mind. The COVID pandemic has awakened many people to the importance of peace of mind and good health. What is a unique Buddhist philosophy for peace of mind and healthy body?
그래서 또 나야미 튼지르면 망고 르심게 최대한라 도난처로서 난쇼를 르심게 되고.
So COVID pandemic has raised the awareness of peace of mind and good health. So if you are without anxiety but peaceful in your mind, your body elements also would be in equilibrium, they will be in balance. So, of course, we need to take care of our physical health, but the best means to do that, to achieve physical health, is to have a calm and relaxed state of mind. And this is very much dependent on wishing others to be cherishing others over oneself. Whereas the philosophical views would be quite complicated.
请问尊者，对于初学佛者而言，如何以量检视自己对三宝？
So how can a beginner-level student gain confidence in the three jewels, the Four Noble Truths, and the law of causality by means of logical approach? So you need to have a good teacher. So there's a teacher giving you teachings. If they could teach you the Dharma by using classical texts, the great treatises, it would be good. Whereas if they focus on a very short teaching, concise, calling them to be the tradition or transmission of the lamas, of course, if these teachers understand what their Lama had taught them in a very concise manner, and they could maybe explain it well. Whereas if someone is not so learned in the great treatises, they cannot do that, give such explanations. And so the instructions of the Lamas should be backed up by these great treatises. Is it certain that the innate clear light mind manifests for anyone at death? Our scriptures mention that ordinary beings who haven't learned the Dharma will not recognize the clear light at death. However, one may be liberated through the methods introduced by one's spiritual master, who is close by to instruct you on the clear light mind. When is the ideal time to introduce someone to the clear light? At the time of death. So first of all, you need to differentiate between the body and the mind and understand that there is mind. Of course, both have their own substantial causes. So of course, if you do not think about this, reflect on this, it's a different matter. But if you think, you will see that there are differences between these substantial causes. So within the mind, we have the mind during the waking state, mind during sleep state, mind during deep sleep, and dreaming state. And then as you go through the dying process, you have the breath stops at some point.
And Moscow University,
So some scientists from Moscow University are doing some investigation. They want to start a project investigating the subtle state of mind in people who are known as remaining in Tugdam, a meditative kind of state, even after clinical death, during which the body of the person still remains fresh. And so due to what reason does this body remain fresh even after clinical death? And they should investigate into that. So the sensorial perceptions, sensorial consciousness, such as eye consciousness, nose, tongue, and so forth, are gross states of mind. Whereas the nature of clarity and awareness, which is the quality of mind, persists throughout our life, since our birth and conception in the mother's womb. So even animals have this experience of the gross and subtle states of mind. When an animal is killed, slaughtered, they go through the process of dissolution of these the gross states of mind into the subtle states of mind in a very quick. This happens very quickly at that time. So, of course, if with regard to these subtle and these gross states of mind, it would be difficult to see the dissolution process happening when someone is killed in the war or through by shooting
第九题由福智比丘
and so
僧团
forth.
清源法师提出，请问尊者，广论中亲近善知识
In the section on reliance on Guru in Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise of the stages of the path of the enlightenment, it is stated that we must train and in cultivating faith and respect to our spiritual master. How should we practice the aspect of faith in our gurus in daily life? So, of course, in the Lamrim text, there is this topic of reliance on Guru is treated separately. So there, in the text, it also gives the criteria for a spiritual master. And in Lamrim Chemo, it is even mentioned that in order to discipline others, there's no way you can do it if you are not disciplined yourself. And therefore, those who wish to discipline and others, tame others, should tame themselves first. So in the big monastic institutions of learning, we have these many teachers. So however poor they may be in this kind of practice, they have quite a good quality, quite a number of these criteria that are mentioned in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, where it goes through 10 qualifications or criteria. And so it is very important for the teacher himself or herself to be subdued. It is difficult for the lay people to pursue steady reflection and meditation of the Dharma like the monastics. So what should a lay organization consider as their most important practice? So the teaching of the Buddha use logic and also teach about the matter. Of course, these can be taught as part of an academic subject. This is possible, but in the beginning, of course, you can go do that. But as you go further into the teaching, then you also need to think about practices like patience and so forth. And when you apply these teachings on patience and so forth within yourself, integrate the teaching within yourself, you'll see the benefit. And so when teaching others, you may teach the subjects without relating to future lives and so forth, but to using these teachings as academic subjects and teaching people how they should be kind and good people and moral, practicing morality and so forth. So in this way, you can use the teachings in academic settings as well as for practice. How does Master Dignaga logically establish the intended meaning of the three wheels of the Dharma? So I do not have much to say about this. So Dignaga was a Chittamatra master. He asserts that he asserts non-duality. When we hear about the genocide in Tibet and Xinjiang, how should we develop compassion towards the perpetrators of genocide? So in Tibet, China, the Chinese communists have destroyed monasteries and also killed very rudely, using atrocious means, the practitioners. So what you can think about is that these perpetrators are actually creating so much negative karma within themselves and feel empathy and compassion towards them instead of having growing anger or negative thoughts. Your Holiness advises us to practice bodhichitta and the view of emptiness daily, and we also wish to do so. However, we lack the thought of renunciation and our knowledge and training in bodhichitta and the view of emptiness is poor. So how can we fulfill Your Holiness's aspirations?
渐次增上，成就像法王一样的人。
公司初期将什么当多年个到啊，年月行的年数连个把数嘛，但居家那么样的，但中什么样，我就个上班没把当，将就个什么当多年个到啊了，将把样明白，公司初期公司但就被他的其他因素。
So the mind follows familiarization. The more familiar you are with something, you'll see change within yourself happening in respect to that experience. So with regard to bodhicitta and view of emptiness, I didn't have any idea about bodhicitta and this emptiness, view of emptiness at all. I only liked to play with others. As I grew up, then I found out that these two are the true source of peace within oneself and others. And by reading the scriptures and also using logic and integrating these teachings within myself, I've found them to be so important. So in my childhood, Ling Rinpoche, of course, was my main teacher. Of course, he did not teach me about how I should integrate the teachings within myself in my childhood, although he taught me the philosophical texts. But as I gradually, as I paid more attention and took interest in these, and having also seen what's going on in the world at large, and then from my experience in life, I found that bodhicitta and the view of emptiness are true source of peace of mind. And also I find that this would be true for the others as well. This same logic can be extended to others. As I became older and having seen different things happening in the world, then I found these two principles to be very important. Some people consider it better to help humans than animals such as stray dogs and cats, but Buddhism teaches that all sentient beings are equal. please advise us whether we should help undomesticated animals or not.
怎么看？
미가 시기 담에 딘조 남라 팬도 제발레 조아 밀라 팬도 제발라 거의 삼수 유메 난초레 심진 탐진 냠발 숨베 담에 딘조 남라 따용 제추 고민고 깔lum럼데 나와 슈스
다 심제 에네 동에 메드보다 대원되베 에네
So, ancient beings
미치고
who do not want suffering but want happiness, it's not only about human beings.
시
When we talk about sentient beings,
장만 순지 사물로 동에 메드보다
even flies and insects have the same wish not to have suffering and not to have happiness. You can see it very clearly if you see a fly or some insect moving certain direction, if you point your finger at it, it'll immediately turn away from it. This shows that they do not want something that disturbs them. And they have, because they are threatened. So all sentient beings have the same wish. So of course, happiness comes through our thinking process. The animals are not able to use such faculty like humans. So we as humans should not think only of the temporarily overcoming the unwanted things, the difficulties and problems in life. If you can avoid them, of course, you should. But if there is no way to avoid it, but you have to face it, then you should face it with patience and tolerance. And also listen to the teachings of your teachers so that you are able to accept the situation and use it to in your favor. So of course you need to have knowledge to do that. Otherwise it would be difficult. So having learned about these practices, and of course, you should also have teachers who can teach according to your mental disposition, which is very important. So practicing virtue or wholesome actions, the wholesome practices can be done through training. So for that, teachers who guide you through the teachings is very important. So you do not need to have someone, so-called teacher, to make you aware of these virtuous practices of patience and so forth. Even your roommate can be helpful in that way, aspect of the practice. So as Tibetans, we since our childhood we are used to avoiding sinful actions like killing bugs and so forth. But those who have no such environment in their life, in their childhood, of course would not have that kind of opportunity. So
第15题由福智比丘尼僧团文旭师提问，请问
how should a monastic turn their behavior into bodhisattva deeds? So the monastics who have left their household life Of course, we should restrain the gross actions of body and speech, which is part of the monastic vows. So in the Pratimoksha vows, the individual liberation vows, these are taught to restrain, to practice. And then on top of that, you should add the Bodhisattva practices, the extensive practices. So the Pratimoksha vows become the foundation, which comprise of the 4 defeats, 13 remainders, and so forth. And so restraining harming others. So in a way, the practice of Bodhisattva, the Pratimoksha vow includes also this restraint of harming others. These days, many monastics disrobe due to various reasons, and some of them feel regret and disappointment and lost their faith in the Dharma. What would you advise them? How can these former monastics serve the Dharma?
Deba loba so resong jung shimba dedala kalok lamden jiyes jasu de namgi tembala shibde jidar shukuyes.
Ten gyukin naso gyuwang rabzhu mabu jasar parse gyesim da lobam shiba tawa loba so resong jung shiba dedala kalok dadi
So, right in the beginning, when they became monastics, their teachers and parents, so if they have become monastics, understanding the benefits and the advantages of being monastic, it would be good. But if the parents just send their children to monastery to become monastics in the monasteries, then the person in himself, the individual monk or nun, may not have that much interest in becoming monk or nuns. So most of the people are like that. Whereas after having become monastics, if they see the benefit of it, then it would be good to keep the vows. Ramana Vartika Karika, chapter 2, teaches that the nature of our mind is compassionate. However, I always feel worried, anxious, and selfish, and can't think of others. I have difficulty being aware of that quality within myself. How can I know through the analysis that I have the quality of compassion?
Mado shem jema dupes rani ki gula yunden de changwa shekawes jidar jede rani zewe dani de sheba tubes.
So that's the last question. You said.
Namri liu ni wale ngame sim shu zawa dang she sim de zewe dani de suna.
So I don't know if Pramanavartika Karika says that the mind's nature is compassionate. It teaches that through familiarization you can feel the impact of your meditation on compassion on your mind. So in a society where people have the example of others to copy from, not to harm others, such as killing bugs or pelting rocks at animals and so forth. And not doing these, or doing these are considered to be negative, then of course the children will have that kind of a habit of not harming others. So if you have a good imprint from the past lives, I mean, that would be an exception. Whereas for most people, we need instructions or advice, counsel from our parents and other people, teachers and so forth, for compassion. So a mother's love for her children and the child's love for the mother is something that may be, we can say they are instinctive. So this mutual love or affection between the child and the mother is something natural for the mammals. So those societies where they have the practice of Buddhist ethics, the parents would counsel their children not to kill bugs and small insects and animals and so forth. So the children learn not to do that. So not killing, instructing them, the children, not to kill butterflies or other insects and bugs and so forth. I mean, through these counselings, then, of course, it becomes a kind of a habit in the child not to kill or take the life of others. Whereas when you have a sound sleep and a mosquito comes by to disturb your sleep, of course, you will grab it, catch it. So we have this nature or habit of not harming others since our childhood, being in such an environment. So with this, we conclude the question and answer session. Now, next is Bodhisattva vows. So we'll do the Bodhisattva vows. So, as for me, I take Bodhisattva and Tantric vows every day. So, in order to take Bodhisattva vows here, of course, we have the Buddha Shakyamuni statue. And imagine in front of you a Buddha in person. And surrounded by Nagarjuna, Master Nagarjuna, Asanga, and so forth, Arya Asanga, and all these different masters of Nalanda tradition who have bodhichitta within their mind, the experience of bodhichitta. And since we take them as our role models, from the Buddha down to our masters and the lineage masters, the great upholders of the Dharma, when they practiced the Dharma, they went through the practice of Pratimoksha vows, bodhichitta, and Tantra, the external, internal, and secret practices, as they are called. So the teachers and lineage teachers with these vows, imagine them. And so, having taken the Bodhimoksha vows, and you are keeping them, and also the knowing about, understanding what are the 18 root downfalls and what are these 46 minor branch infractions. You should keep away from them. Think of not harming others, but thinking of helping others. So with this determination, understand that now in this life you are born as human beings and met with the teaching of the Buddha and met with the teachers who teach the great Mahayana scriptures. So many of them, and so make the determination that you will keep the Bodhisattva vows, imagining the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas in front of you in the space. So just as they have taken the vows, Bodhisattva vows, and kept them, make the determination that you will follow in suit. And so please crouch or kneel on your right knee. So I am giving you the Bodhisattva vows here. I make bodhicitta as my primary practice and take Bodhisattva vows every day. So by understanding the benefits of Bodhisattva vows, I am someone who practice them. So just as I, who am your teacher, practices in this way, you also feel determined to follow suit in my footsteps, just like the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have done. Please repeat, I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess all misdeeds, each and every misdeed. I rejoice in the virtuous deeds of all beings. I take to mind Buddha's enlightenment. To the Buddha, Dharma, and the highest assembly, I seek refuge until I reach enlightenment. To fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I shall generate the mind for awakening. Having generated the mind for highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall engage in the delighting supreme practices of enlightenment. May I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings. So, having repeated the first time, please repeat for the second time. I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every misdeed. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to mind Buddha's enlightenment. To the Buddha, Dharma, and the highest assembly, I seek refuge until I reach enlightenment. To fulfill the interests of oneself and others, I shall generate the mind for awakening. Having generated the mind for highest awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall engage in the delightful, supreme practices of enlightenment. May I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings. Now you have repeated 2 times, and at the end of the 3rd repetition, now, when you say, may I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings, think that the complete set of Bodhisattva vows, similar to what the Lama has, also I generate. So I seek refuge in the three jewels. I confess each and every misdeeds. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to mind Buddha's enlightenment. To the Buddha, Dharma, and highest assembly, I seek refuge until I am enlightened. To fulfill the interests of myself and others, I shall generate the mind for awakening. Having generated the highest mind of awakening, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall engage in the delightful supreme practices of enlightenment. May I attain Buddhahood to benefit all sentient beings. So, on a daily, you should use these texts, these lines, and take Bodhisattva vows. If you do that, Even while you go to sleep, you will feel at ease and relaxed. And as you go like that for days, months, and years, you will have more peace of mind and more friends, and you will be someone who would work for peace in the world peace. So the Bodhisattva vows, keeping away from the 18 root downfalls, praising oneself and belittling others, not sharing Dharma teachings or wealth, not listening even if others apologize or strike them, and so forth, which is found in the succession Guru Yoga, and also the 46 minor infractions. So with this, we dedicate the merits. Just as the brave Bodhisattva, Manjushri, or Samanthabhadra too, realize things as they are, also I dedicate all these merits in the best way, as that I may follow their perfect examples. This is the prayer for the long life of His Holiness, written by Gyabje Yongdzin Ling Rinpoche and Gyabje Yongdzin Tijang Rinpoche. Om Swasti to the assembly of the most kind teachers, both present and past, the miraculous dance of the body, speech, and mind of innumerable bodies, manifesting in accord with aspirants' spiritual capacities, the wish-granting jewel, the source of all virtues and goodness. To you we offer our prayers with fervent devotion, that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snows, live for 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings, so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the assembly of all meditational deities, manifesting as countless mandalas and divinities, the magical clouds of immaculate transcendent wisdom reaching to the furthest expanse of space, of ultimate reality. To you we offer prayers with fervent devotion that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snow, will live 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To all the victorious Buddhas of the three times, endowed with 10 powers and who are even masters of the gods, and whose attributes of perfection are the source of all compassionate deeds, benefiting the vast ocean-like realms of sentient beings. To you we offer prayers with fervent devotion that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snow, live for 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the assembly of sacred doctrine embodied in the three vehicles, supremely serene as jewel treasure of enlightenment, stainless, unchanging, eternally good, and glory of all virtues, which actually liberates all beings from the sufferings of the three worlds. To you we offer prayers with fervent devotion that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snow, live for 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings that his aspirations be fulfilled without hindrance. To all members of the enlightening, noble spiritual community who never stray from the thoroughly liberating adamant city, who possess the wisdom eye that directly sees the profound truth and the highest valor to destroy all machinations of cyclic existence, to you we offer prayers with fervent devotion that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snow, live for 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the assembly of heroes and darkinis, heavenly beings of three worlds who appear in the highest paradise, in the sacred places, and in the cremation grounds, and who, through creative play in the hundredfold experience of bliss and emptiness, support practitioners in their meditation on the excellent path. To you we offer prayers with fervent devotion that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snow, live for 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings so that his aspirations are fulfilled without hindrance. To the ocean of protectors endowed with eyes of transcendent wisdom, the powerful guardians and upholders of the teaching who wear inseparably on their matted knots, matted locks, the knot symbolizing their pledge to the Vajra holder. To you we offer prayers with fervent devotion that Tenzin Gyatso, protector of the land of snow, live for 100 eons. Shower on him your blessings so that aspirations will fulfilled without hindrance. Thus, to this congregation of excellent, undeceiving refuge, we pray that by the power of this prayer, expressed from the heart, from a heart filled with fervent devotion and humility, may the body, speech, and mind of the sole protectors of land of snow, the supreme Ngawang Losang Tenzin Gyatso, be indestructible, unfluctuating, unceasing. May he live for 100 eons, seated on a diamond throne transcending decay and destruction. You are the jewel heart embodying all compassionate, beneficial deeds. O most courageous one, you carry on your shoulders the burden of all the Buddhas of the infinite realms. May all your noble aspirations be fulfilled as intended. By virtue of this, may the heavenly doors of the fortunate Aeon era open eternally as a source of relief and respite for all beings, and may the auspicious signs reach the apex of existence and release. As the sacred teachings flourish through all times and in all realms, may the nectar stream of the blessings of the lotus holder always enter our hearts and nourish them with strength. May we please you with offerings of dedicated practice, and may we reach beyond the shores of perfect compassionate deeds through the blessings of the wondrous Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, by the infallible truth of the laws of dependent origination, and by the purity of our fervent aspirations, may the aims of my prayer be fulfilled. Our prayer be fulfilled without hindrance.
愿记录教奉行供养清净，不显妙心大海春秋，悉有诸佛佛子持加持愿祈，无狂之真体我已尽，真上意乐力其愿顺，速满足愿望。
喂，大家好，那我们等一下是先以比丘僧团来照相，比丘僧团来照，看我们这边的居士，左边的这边居士，请站起来往后退。